My parents said, "We spent 95% of your savings to buy your brother's house." My brother mocked me, "You don't have a single penny left." But I burst out laughing, because they didn't know that those savings were. The phone call came at 7:43 on a Tuesday morning, which should have been my first warning. My mother never called before 9 unless someone had died or she needed something. "Marcus, we need to talk to you," she said, her voice carrying that particular blend of defensiveness and self-righteousness I'd learned to recognize over 31 years. "Your father and I made a decision. About the family. About helping everyone succeed." I set down my coffee, already feeling the familiar tightness in my chest. "What decision, Mom?" "We used your savings account. The one we've been managing since you were 18. We needed it for Tyler's house." She paused, clearly expecting an explosion. 95% of it. For the down payment and closing costs. He's finally getting on his feet, Marcus. You should be happy for your brother. The number hit me like a physical blow. Not because of what they'd taken, but because of what they thought they'd taken. I did the math instantly in my head, the accountant and me never sleeping. According to their records, that account held roughly $240,000. My entire life's savings, as far as they knew. Every birthday check from relatives, every penny I deposited from summer jobs, every bit of the modest inheritance from my grandmother that had been held in trust by my parents. "You spent my money," I said slowly, wanting to hear her say it again. "Without asking me. Without even telling me first. It's for family, Marcus. Family helps family. You've always been so good with money, you'll recover. Tyler needed this. He's been struggling, and Diana is pregnant again, and the apartment was too small. We saw an opportunity and we took it. Parents make sacrifices for their children, and sometimes children need to make sacrifices for each other." There it was. The speech I'd heard variations of my entire life, repackaged for this particular betrayal. Tyler needed. Tyler struggled. Tyler deserved. The golden child, forever requiring rescue, and me, forever expected to provide it. "Mom, that money took me over a decade to save. Every bonus I earned. Every freelance project. Every tax refund I didn't spend on vacations or gadgets. You just took it." "We didn't take it, Marcus." Her voice sharpened slightly, the defensive edge becoming more pronounced. "We borrowed it. For the family. You'll get it back eventually. Tyler's going to make payments to us, and we'll pass them along to you. It's really quite simple if you stop being so dramatic about everything." I could hear my father's voice in the background, muttering something about me being dramatic. Then Tyler's voice, louder, clearer, coming through like he'd grabbed the phone. "Bro, seriously, don't be such a tightwad about this." My younger brother's tone dripped with the casual entitlement I'd spent my entire life accommodating. "You've got that fancy accounting job, you make good money. I've got 3 kids and another on the way. You don't even have a girlfriend. What were you gonna spend it on? More books? Another boring vacation by yourself? At least now the money's doing something useful. Building a real future for a real family." Something in me went very still. Very quiet. The kind of calm that settles over you when you realize exactly how little you matter to the people who were supposed to love you most. "How much exactly?" I asked. "Give me the precise number." Tyler laughed. $228,412. Mom showed me the statement. "Man, you really were saving up. For what? A mail-order bride?" He laughed at his own joke, the sound grating through the phone speaker. "Seriously though, thanks. The house is nice. 4 bedrooms. Big yard for the kids. You should come see it sometime. Consider it your contribution to the family legacy." "I don't have a single penny left," I repeated back to him, keeping my voice neutral. "That's what you're telling me. All my savings. Gone." "Don't be so dramatic," Tyler snorted. "You're 31, you've got plenty of time to save more. I'm 28 with 4 kids. I needed it more. That's just math, bro. Even you should be able to figure that out." I let the silence stretch for 5 full seconds before I responded. When I did, my voice was pleasant, almost warm. "You know what, Tyler? You're absolutely right. That money in that account is gone. Every cent of it. Congratulations on the house. I hope it brings you everything you deserve." I hung up before he could respond. Then I sat at my kitchen table, looked out the window at the gray November morning, and started to laugh. I laughed until tears streamed down my face, until my ribs ached, until I had to set my head down on the cool wood of the table just to catch my breath. Because my parents and my brother had just made the biggest mistake of their lives. And they had absolutely no idea. I should probably explain. My name is Marcus Chen, and I've been the family afterthought for as long as I can remember. Born 3 years before Tyler to parents who never quite figured out what to do with a quiet, bookish child who preferred numbers to sports and solitude to social gatherings. When Tyler came along, loud and charming and demanding attention from his first breath, my parents found the child they'd been waiting for. I learned early that my role in the family was simple: be responsible, be invisible, and be ready to pick up the pieces whenever Tyler made a mess. Which was often. Tyler got caught cheating in high school, and I was pulled out of my AP classes to tutor him through summer school. Tyler crashed our father's car at 19, and my college fund paid for the repairs while he walked away without consequences. Tyler dropped out of community college twice, and I heard lectures about how I needed to be more supportive of my struggling brother instead of showing off with my dean's list achievements. There were smaller indignities, too. The birthday parties where Tyler's friends filled the house while mine received modest gatherings in the backyard. The Christmas mornings where his presents spilled out from under the tree while mine fit in a single neat stack. The family vacations planned around his baseball schedule, his girlfriend's availability, his preferences for destinations. I remember being 12 and asking if we could go to Washington, D.C. because I wanted to see the Smithsonian museums, and my father laughed like I'd told a joke. "Marcus wants to look at old stuff on vacation," he announced to the room. "How about somewhere with a beach instead? Tyler loves the ocean." We went to Florida. Tyler spent the week surfing while I read books on the hotel balcony, watching families on the beach below who seemed to actually enjoy each other's company. The pattern was so consistent that by the time I graduated with my accounting degree at 22, I had accepted a fundamental truth about my family: I was not loved the same way Tyler was. I was useful, reliable, and ultimately expendable. And that knowledge, painful as it was to accept, became the foundation for everything that came after. See, here's what my family never understood about me. Being overlooked gave me something invaluable: time to plan. Time to observe. Time to understand exactly how they operated and prepare accordingly. When I was 18, my parents opened a savings account in my name. It was supposed to be mine, managed jointly with them until I turned 21, at which point full control would transfer to me. Except it never did. Every time I asked about taking over the account, there was an excuse. The bank required their presence. The paperwork was complicated. They'd get around to it eventually. Meanwhile, I should just keep depositing money, and they'd make sure it was safe. I was 23 when I finally understood what that account really was. My grandmother had left me $50,000 when she passed, and I watched that money go into the joint account. 2 months later, Tyler needed help with his first apartment, his first car, his first round of credit card debt. The account balance dropped by $20,000. My parents promised to pay it back. They never did. That was the moment I woke up. I stopped depositing any significant money into that account. I kept it alive with small, regular deposits, enough to make it look legitimate, enough to maintain the illusion that I was still the dutiful son putting away his earnings for a responsible future. But every real dollar I earned went somewhere else entirely. It took me 8 years to build what I really had. I was careful. Methodical. I opened accounts at banks my family had never heard of, national institutions with no local branches they might stumble upon. I invested in index funds through brokerages they couldn't access, watching the compound interest work its magic year after year. I started a side business doing freelance forensic accounting for small businesses, and every penny of that income disappeared into structures they knew nothing about. Tax season became my favorite time of year, not for refunds but for the satisfaction of seeing my parallel financial life grow stronger while the account they monitored remained deliberately stagnant. I even bought property, a small duplex in a decent neighborhood that I rented out for steady income, all held through an LLC with no obvious connection to my name. The company was registered in Delaware, the paperwork handled by a lawyer I paid specifically for his discretion. My tenants mailed rent checks to a P.O. box. The mortgage payments came from a bank account my parents had never heard of. It was a clean, invisible asset that generated nearly $2,000 in net income every month. I lived modestly. My apartment was nice but not extravagant. My car was reliable but unimpressive. My clothes, my vacations, my visible lifestyle, all of it carefully calibrated to suggest someone who was comfortable but not wealthy. Someone who was saving responsibly but not accumulating real assets. Someone who could be taken advantage of without too much guilt. My real net worth, as of that Tuesday morning phone call, was not $240,000. It was $1.4 million. The account my parents had just drained represented less than 18% of my actual savings. And here's the thing that made me laugh until I cried: the money in that account wasn't even really mine. It was a paper trail. A documented history of every dollar my parents had ever borrowed from me, every promise they'd made and broken, every contribution they'd demanded and never repaid. I'd kept that account active specifically to track their parasitic behavior, never expecting they'd be bold enough to simply empty it entirely. They hadn't stolen my future. They'd handed me the evidence I needed to finally cut them off completely, and they'd done it in writing. I spent the rest of that Tuesday doing what I do best: documenting, analyzing, and planning. First, I pulled every bank statement from that joint account going back 13 years. Every deposit, every withdrawal, every transfer. The pattern was damning. Money went in from me, money came out for Tyler. Over and over again. My contributions totaled over $300,000 across those years. The account's current balance before they emptied it had been just over $230,000, which meant they'd already siphoned off roughly $70,000 over the years for various Tyler-related emergencies. Second, I gathered every piece of communication I had from my parents about the account. Emails promising to transfer full control to me. Text messages acknowledging they were borrowing from my savings. Voicemails assuring me the money was mine and would be returned. A birthday card from my mother 2 years ago that included the line, "Your father and I are so proud of how you've built your savings. That money will be there for you when you need it most." Third, I contacted a lawyer. Not just any lawyer, but a forensic accountant turned attorney named Sandra Vance who specialized in financial exploitation within families. I'd met her at a professional conference 3 years earlier and kept her card in my wallet ever since, always suspecting I might need it someday. Her office was in a converted Victorian house in a quiet professional district, all warm wood and leather furniture and diplomas on the walls. She listened to my story without interrupting, occasionally making notes on a yellow legal pad, her expression growing more focused as I outlined the scope of what had happened. "This is a clear case of financial abuse," Sandra told me when I finished. "Even though the account was technically joint, you have extensive documentation showing the money was yours, the promises made to you were explicit, and the withdrawal was done without your consent for someone else's benefit. We can pursue civil action to recover the funds." "What would that look like?" She leaned forward, her voice taking on the measured tone of someone who had delivered this explanation many times. "We'd sue your parents for breach of fiduciary duty and conversion of assets. Given your documentation, we'd likely win. They'd be forced to pay back every dollar, plus interest, plus your legal fees. The house they just bought for your brother? If they can't pay from other sources, that asset could be seized to satisfy the judgment." I let that sink in. The house my money built, taken back to repay what they'd stolen. There was a certain poetic justice to it. "What about criminal charges?" "Possible but harder. You'd need to file a police report, convince a prosecutor to take the case. Financial crimes within families are tricky. Prosecutors often decline unless the amounts are significant and the evidence is overwhelming." She paused, studying my face. "Which in your case, it is. I've seen much weaker cases result in charges. The amounts involved here are substantial, and your documentation is remarkably thorough." "I'm an accountant," I said. "Documenting things is what I do." She smiled. "That's going to serve you very well in this case." "I want to think about it," I told her. "Give me a week. There's something I need to do first." "What's that?" I smiled, even though she couldn't see it. "I need to go see the house my money built." The house was in a suburban development about 40 minutes from my apartment. Nice neighborhood. Good schools. The kind of place young families aspired to live, all neat lawns and minivans and basketball hoops in driveways. Tyler's new home sat at the end of a cul-de-sac, a 2-story colonial with blue shutters and a red front door. I pulled up on Saturday afternoon, having given myself 4 days to let my emotions settle and my plan crystallize. My parents' cars were in the driveway alongside Tyler's truck, and I could see shadows moving behind the windows. A family gathering. How appropriate. Diana answered the door, my sister-in-law's face cycling through surprise, confusion, and something like guilt in rapid succession. She was 7 months pregnant, visibly uncomfortable, one hand pressed against her lower back. "Marcus. We didn't expect you." "Tyler invited me to see the house," I said pleasantly. "Told me I should come by sometime. So here I am." She hesitated, clearly wanting to close the door in my face, but the sounds of voices behind her made the decision for her. Tyler appeared, beer in hand despite it being barely past noon, his expression shifting from jovial to wary when he saw me. "Bro. You actually came. You said I should see it. I wanted to appreciate my contribution to the family legacy." I stepped past Diana before either of them could object. "Nice place. The kitchen looks expensive." My parents emerged from the living room, my mother's face pale, my father's jaw tight. The grandchildren were scattered around the space, Madison playing on a tablet, the twins arguing over a toy, baby Connor sleeping in a bouncy seat. Normal suburban chaos. A normal family scene. Built entirely on theft. "Marcus, we weren't expecting you." My mother's hands were clasped in front of her, her tell for nervousness. "If you'd called first, we could have prepared." "Prepared for what? To hide the granite countertops? The hardwood floors?" I ran my hand along the kitchen island, feeling the cool stone. This must have been at least $20,000 on its own. Custom cabinets, stainless steel appliances, the works. My money really does go a long way when someone else is spending it. I walked deeper into the house, examining the finishes with the eye of someone who had spent years analyzing financial statements. The crown molding. The recessed lighting. The built-in bookshelves in what appeared to be a home office. Every upgrade represented money that should have been mine. "The deck out back," I continued, peering through the sliding glass doors. "That's new construction, not original to the house. Cedar, by the look of it. Must have added another 15 to 20,000 to the purchase price. The previous owners really went all out, didn't they? Tyler set down his beer, his posture shifting from casual to defensive. Okay, I get that you're upset, but can we not do this in front of the kids? Sure. Kids, why don't you go play upstairs? I addressed this to Madison, who at 8 was old enough to understand that something uncomfortable was happening. She gathered her brothers quickly, sensing the tension, and disappeared up the stairs with the efficiency of a child accustomed to adult drama. Diana followed them up, mumbling something about checking on the baby. Smart woman. She'd always had better instincts than my brother about when to exit a situation. When they were gone, I turned back to my family. My voice remained calm, even friendly. So, let's talk about the house my savings bought. It's not like that. My father finally spoke, his tone the same dismissive grumble he'd used my entire life whenever I raised concerns. Family money is family money. We didn't spend your savings. We invested them. In Tyler's future. In the grandchildren's stability. You don't have kids, Marcus. You don't understand what it means to prioritize the next generation. I don't have kids, I agreed. I also don't have $230,000 anymore. How exactly is that an investment in my future? My mother stepped forward, her voice taking on the soothing tone she always used when trying to placate me. Marcus, honey, we'll pay you back. Eventually. When Tyler's more established, when he's earning more, he can contribute to a fund and we'll replace what we borrowed. Borrowed. I tasted the word. You borrowed my money. The way you've been borrowing from me for years. $73,412. That's the total I've calculated of money you've taken from that account over the past 13 years without my consent. Tyler snorted. You can't be serious with this. You're actually keeping track? I'm an accountant, Tyler. Keeping track is literally what I do. I pulled out my phone, opened the document I'd prepared. Would you like to see the spreadsheet? Every withdrawal, dated and documented. Every email and text message where you promised to pay me back. Every excuse, every delay, every lie. The room went silent. Even Diana, who had been trying to fade into the background, stopped moving. My mother's face had drained of color. Marcus, I don't know what you think you're going to accomplish with this. We're your family. Families don't sue each other. Interesting assumption. I smiled pleasantly. Who said anything about suing? Tyler's expression shifted. Wait. You're not going to sue? I haven't decided yet. I'm gathering information. Like, for instance, I'm curious who actually owns this house now. The deed is in your name, right Tyler? Not mom and dad's? Tyler's silence told me everything I needed to know. So what we have here, I continued, is a scenario where our parents took my money, gave it to you, and now you own an asset worth roughly $380,000 based on comparable sales in this neighborhood. An asset purchased with funds that don't legally belong to you. Funds I can document as stolen. My father's face had gone red. Now you listen here. I'm still your father and I won't tolerate this kind of disrespect in my son's home. Your son's home that my money paid for. And about that respect you mentioned. I put my phone away. I've spent 31 years being the responsible one, the reliable one, the one who never caused problems. I watched you bail Tyler out over and over while I worked 2 jobs through college because my education fund mysteriously evaporated when he crashed your car. I watched you promise to return money you never had any intention of returning. I watched you lie to my face about managing my savings responsibly while funneling every dollar into his latest disaster. I stepped closer to my father, who for the first time in my memory, took a step back. So here's what's going to happen. I'm going to walk out of this house my money built, get in my car, and drive home. I'm going to spend the next week deciding whether to pursue legal action. And you're all going to sit here in this beautiful house and think about whether your treatment of me over the past 3 decades was worth the consequences you're about to face. Tyler found his voice, but it had lost its earlier confidence. You're bluffing. You don't have the guts to actually take us to court. I paused at the front door, looking back at my brother. Tyler, you've spent your entire life underestimating me. Every decision you've ever seen me make was calculated to keep me safe from exactly this kind of betrayal. Did you really think I kept all my money in one account that our parents had access to? The flicker of confusion on his face was deeply satisfying. What do you mean? I mean you spent $230,000. It's a lot of money. Life-changing for someone like you, who's never managed to hold on to a dollar longer than it takes to spend it. I opened the door, feeling the cold November air rush in. But it's not my entire life savings. It's not even close. I walked out before they could respond, got in my car, and drove away. The look on Tyler's face stayed with me the entire drive home. That dawning realization that he'd miscalculated. That the quiet, boring, overlooked brother might not be quite as predictable as he'd always assumed. Update 1, 2 weeks later. The first domino fell on a Thursday. I had spent the 2 weeks since my visit to Tyler's house in a state of productive stillness. I filed the police report Sandra recommended, knowing it would likely go nowhere but wanting the official record. I sent formal demand letters to both my parents and Tyler, requesting full restitution of all funds within 30 days. I also quietly reached out to a few relatives I still trusted, my mother's sister Carol and my late grandmother's brother Paul, to inform them of what had happened. The family response was predictable. My parents left increasingly desperate voicemails insisting I was overreacting, that this could all be worked out within the family, that bringing lawyers into it was a betrayal of everything family meant. Tyler sent a series of aggressive texts calling me bitter, jealous, and pathetic, culminating in a message that read, "You really gonna destroy mom and dad over money? Some brother you are." I saved every message. Every voicemail. Every text. But the Thursday domino wasn't any of those things. It was a phone call from my Aunt Carol. "Marcus, I need you to sit down." Her voice was shaking. "Your mother called me. She was asking to borrow money. A lot of money. And when I asked why, she broke down and told me everything." "What did she tell you?" "That they're in trouble. Real trouble. Marcus, they took out a second mortgage on their house to help Tyler buy his place. Your money wasn't enough. They added another $100,000 to make the deal work. And now they're struggling to make payments on both properties because Tyler was supposed to be making payments to them and he hasn't paid a single dollar in 2 months." I absorbed this information carefully. Tyler's not paying them back. No. He says he can't afford it. The baby's coming, Diana's not working, and his job at the car dealership has been slow. He's barely covering his own mortgage. Your parents are drowning. Your father had to cancel his retirement plans. Your mother is talking about going back to work, and she's 63 with a bad back. I felt something complicated twist in my chest. Not sympathy, exactly. My parents had made their choices. But there was a bitter satisfaction in seeing the natural consequences unfold, mixed with a grief for the family that might have existed if they'd ever treated me fairly. "Why are you telling me this, Aunt Carol?" "Because your mother asked me to talk to you. To convince you to drop this lawsuit business. To forgive them." She paused. And I told her no. I hadn't expected that. "You did?" "Marcus, I watched your grandmother's face when she signed that we're leaving you money. She told me, that boy is going to be overlooked his whole life by those parents of his. This money is my way of making sure he is something they can't touch. And then they touched it anyway. They took what mama left specifically for you because she knew they'd never give you anything themselves." I was quiet for a long moment. Grandma knew? She knew. And she would be furious at what they've done. "So no, I'm not going to convince you to forgive them. I'm calling to tell you that if you need character witnesses, if you need someone to testify about how they've treated you your whole life, I'm here. And Uncle Paul feels the same way." After we hung up, I sat in my apartment and thought about my grandmother. About the birthday card she'd send with $20 bills tucked inside, always addressed only to me. About the afternoon she'd invite me over when Tyler was at sports practice, making lemon bars and telling me stories about her own difficult family. About the way she'd held my hand at her husband's funeral and whispered, "You're the strong one, Marcus. Remember that when things get hard." She'd known all along. She'd tried to protect me, and they'd still found a way to take what she'd given. I remembered a conversation we'd had when I was 17, sitting on her back porch watching fireflies in the gathering dark. She'd asked me about my plans for the future, and I'd told her I wanted to be an accountant. She'd laughed softly and said, "Of course you do. You've always been the one who keeps track." Then her face had grown serious. "Marcus, I want you to promise me something. Whatever money comes to you in this life, keep it close. Keep it safe. Don't let anyone make you feel guilty for protecting what's yours." I hadn't fully understood what she meant at the time. Now I did. The grief I felt then was real and sharp, but so was the resolve that followed. The second domino fell exactly 30 days after my demand letter, when the deadline for restitution passed with no payment received. Sandra and I filed the civil lawsuit the following morning. The complaint was 43 pages long, meticulously detailed, supported by years of financial records, communications, and documentation. We named my parents and Tyler as defendants, requesting full restitution of all converted funds plus interest, compensatory damages, punitive damages, and attorney's fees. The filing process itself was anticlimactic. Just paperwork, signatures, and fees. But walking out of the courthouse that morning, I felt something shift inside me. For the first time in my life, I was actively fighting back against my family instead of simply enduring. It felt strange, uncomfortable, and strangely liberating. The local newspaper picked up the story 3 days later. I hadn't anticipated this, but apparently financial exploitation cases within families were newsworthy, especially when the amounts were substantial. A reporter named Janet Marsh left me a voicemail asking for comment. After consulting with Sandra, I called her back. We met at a coffee shop near my office, neutral territory where I could control the conversation without inviting her into my personal space. She was younger than I'd expected, maybe late 20s, with sharp eyes and a notebook that she kept open throughout our conversation. "Mr. Chen, thank you for speaking with me." Her voice was professional, curious. "Can you tell me why you decided to pursue legal action against your own family?" I chose my words carefully. I spent 13 years watching my family take money that was meant for my future and give it to someone else. I documented everything, hoping they would eventually make it right. When they emptied my savings account to buy my brother a house without even asking me, I realized they never intended to treat me fairly. The legal system exists to address exactly this kind of injustice. Some people might say that taking family disputes to court is extreme. What would you say to them? I would say that family relationships should go both ways. I was expected to be endlessly patient, endlessly forgiving, endlessly willing to sacrifice for people who never sacrificed anything for me. There's a word for that kind of arrangement. It's called exploitation. And calling it family doesn't make it acceptable. She wrote furiously for a moment, then looked up. "Your family hasn't responded to my requests for comment. Is there anything you'd like to say to them directly, through this article?" I thought about it. About my mother's tears and my father's anger. About Tyler's entitlement and the children who would grow up in a house built on stolen money. Just this: I spent my whole life hoping they would see me, value me, include me in the family the same way they included my brother. That hope is gone now. What's left is clarity. I know exactly who they are, and I'm done pretending otherwise. The article ran the following Sunday, and my phone started ringing with numbers I didn't recognize. Most were from other journalists, following up on the story or looking for a fresh angle. A few were from strangers who had read the article and wanted to share their own experiences with family financial abuse. One woman called crying, telling me about how her brothers had pressured their elderly mother to sign over her house, leaving her homeless at 78. Another was a man whose business partner turned out to be his cousin, who had been embezzling for years. The stories were heartbreaking, and each one reinforced my decision to pursue this case publicly. Then there was the call from Linda, who worked at the car dealership where Tyler was employed. "I probably shouldn't be calling you," she said, her voice nervous. "But I read that article, and I thought you should know something. Your brother's been bragging about this for weeks. Telling everyone in the break room how his parents gave him a house and his idiot brother didn't even know until it was too late. He thinks it's funny. He's been calling you names I won't repeat. Why are you telling me this?" "Because he stiffed me on a commission last month. Took credit for a sale I made because he knew the customer's father. Customer came in asking for Tyler by name, but I'd spent 3 hours with him the day before, doing all the work. Tyler swooped in at the last minute, got his friend to close with him instead of me, and pocketed a $4,000 commission that should have been mine." She laughed bitterly. "And when I complained to management, they sided with him. Said it was my word against his, and the customer requested Tyler specifically. That sounds like something he would do. I guess I just wanted you to know you're not the only one he treats like trash. I hope you win your lawsuit. I hope they take that house right out from under him." I thanked her for the information, added it to my growing file, and started to realize that Tyler's behavior wasn't limited to just me. He'd been leaving wreckage everywhere he went. The only difference was that most of his victims didn't have the resources to fight back. My parents tried one more time to reach me directly. They showed up at my apartment building on a Sunday evening, waiting in the lobby when I came back from grocery shopping. My mother's eyes were red from crying. My father looked like he'd aged a decade in the past month. "Marcus, please." My mother stepped forward, reaching for my arm. "We need to talk. Really talk. Without lawyers, without newspaper reporters. Just family." I looked at them for a long moment. These people who had raised me. Who had fed me and clothed me and kept a roof over my head. Who had also systematically deprioritized me my entire life, treated me as a resource to be exploited rather than a person to be loved. "Okay," I said finally. "Come upstairs. We can talk." They followed me up, my mother making small sounds of surprise at my apartment. It wasn't luxurious, but it was comfortable, well furnished, clearly the home of someone with financial stability. I'd always been careful to present myself as doing fine but not prosperous when they visited, which had been rarely. Now I didn't bother hiding anything. "This is nice." My father looked around, something like suspicion in his eyes. "Accounting must pay better than I thought." "I do well." I gestured for them to sit on the couch. "You wanted to talk. So talk." They sat, looking uncomfortable and out of place on my modern gray sectional. My apartment was everything their cluttered, dated house wasn't: clean lines, minimal decoration, spaces designed for thinking rather than accumulating. I'd built this place as a sanctuary from the chaos of my childhood home. Seeing them here felt wrong, like oil mixing with water. My mother twisted her hands together. "Marcus, we made a mistake. We see that now. We should have asked you first. We should have explained why we needed the money, given you a chance to say yes. Would you have taken no for an answer? She hesitated. That hesitation told me everything. Here's what I don't understand, I continued, sitting across from them. You've had 31 years to treat me like part of this family. 31 years to include me, to value me, to make me feel like I mattered as much as Tyler. And in 31 years, you never once managed to do it. So why should I believe that anything would be different now? My father's jaw tightened. We always loved you, Marcus. Both of you. Equally. No. I kept my voice calm. You didn't. You loved Tyler more. You supported Tyler more. You sacrificed for Tyler more. I was the backup child. The one you kept around in case he needed something. That's not true. My father's face was reddening. Tyler needed more help than you. He struggled more. You were always fine. You never needed us. I never needed you because I learned early that needing you was pointless. Every time I needed something, there was always something more important. Tyler's problems. Tyler's dreams. Tyler's family. You trained me to be self-sufficient because the alternative was being constantly disappointed. My mother started crying. That's not true. That's not fair. Tell me one time you chose me over Tyler. One time in 31 years when my needs came first. When I was protected instead of sacrificed. The silence stretched. 5 seconds. 10. 15. I can't think of anything specific right now, my mother finally said, but that doesn't mean it never happened. It means you can't remember it. Which means it either didn't happen or it was so rare that it made no impression. I leaned forward. I'm not asking for an apology anymore. I stopped expecting apologies years ago. I'm just asking you to finally be honest. With me and with yourselves. About who you chose to love more. About what that cost me. My father stood up abruptly. This is pointless. You're determined to be the victim, to punish us for doing what any parents would do. Tyler needed more help than you. He struggled more. Life was harder for him. Life was harder for him because you never let him experience consequences. Every time he made a mistake, you fixed it. Every time I worked hard, you ignored it. You created the person he became, and then you stole from me to keep enabling him. My father pointed at me, his hand shaking. Drop this lawsuit. Drop it now, or I swear to you, Marcus, you will never be welcome in this family again. I looked at him. At this man who had never once attended my college events, who had skipped my graduation to help Tyler move apartments, who had forgotten my birthday 3 years in a row but could recite Tyler's children's birth dates from memory. Dad, I said quietly, I was never really welcome in this family to begin with. They left without another word. My mother was sobbing. My father didn't look back. I sat in my empty apartment, feeling the strange lightness of finally saying things I'd kept inside for decades. It hurt. It would keep hurting for a long time. But it was also a relief so profound it felt almost physical, like setting down a weight I'd been carrying so long I'd forgotten it was there. Update 2, 4 months after the initial incident. The lawsuit settled out of court on a cold March morning. Sandra and I met the opposing counsel at a mediator's office downtown, a neutral space designed for exactly these kinds of tense negotiations. My parents arrived separately from Tyler, which told me something about the state of their relationships. My mother wouldn't look at me. My father glared. Tyler just seemed tired, the bravado from his earlier texts completely gone. The mediation took 9 hours. 9 hours of negotiations, counteroffers, and heated arguments conducted through attorneys. I sat in one conference room, they rotated between 2 others. The mediator, a retired judge with silver hair and infinite patience, shuttled between us like a diplomatic envoy. It didn't go exactly as I'd hoped, but it went well enough. My parents simply didn't have the resources to fight a prolonged legal battle. Their second mortgage, Tyler's non-payment, and the costs of defending the lawsuit had put them in a precarious financial position. Their attorney advised them to settle before things got worse. The terms were these: my parents would pay me $170,000 over 5 years, secured by a lien on their home. Tyler would pay me $90,000 over 7 years, secured by a lien on the house my money had originally purchased. The total was slightly more than what had been taken from my account, accounting for interest and a portion of my legal fees. When we signed the final documents, I looked across the table at my family for the first time, in hours. My mother was crying silently. My father's jaw was set in that stubborn line I remembered from childhood. Tyler just stared at the papers, his signature already drying on the page. Was it worth it? Tyler asked suddenly, breaking the silence. Tearing the family apart over money? I considered the question seriously. The family was already apart, Tyler. You just didn't notice because you were always on the receiving end. I stood, gathered my copies of the settlement documents, and walked out without another word. I would never see most of that money. I knew that going in. Tyler would probably default within a year. My parents might manage the payments for a while, but their age and financial situation made long-term compliance unlikely. The real victory wasn't the money. The real victory was the public record. The settlement agreement acknowledged, in legally binding terms, that funds had been taken from me without my knowledge or consent. That my family had converted assets that belonged to me. That what they had done was wrong. I framed a copy of that acknowledgement. It hangs in my home office now, next to my accounting license and the picture of my grandmother on her back porch. In the months following the settlement, things continued to unfold. Tyler lost his job at the dealership. According to Aunt Carol, who remained my primary source of family information, his behavior had become increasingly erratic and entitled, and his employer finally had enough. Linda, the woman who had called me about the commission dispute, sent me an email when it happened. They finally saw what he really is, she wrote. Took them long enough. Tyler was struggling to make his mortgage payments even before my lien added additional pressure. There was talk of selling the house. Of moving in with Diana's parents. Of bankruptcy. The beautiful colonial with the blue shutters and red front door, the symbol of everything my money was supposed to buy for him, was slipping through his fingers like sand. My parents sold their home to pay off the second mortgage and avoid foreclosure. They moved into a small apartment in a less desirable neighborhood, a 2-bedroom unit in a complex that catered mostly to young professionals and students. My mother did go back to work, part-time at a craft store, her back making full-time employment impossible. My father, whose retirement plans had depended on the equity in their house, found himself facing years of continued work at 68. I could have felt guilty about this. Part of me wanted to. These were my parents, after all. The people who had given me life, who had raised me, who had done their best according to their understanding of what was right. But their best had included systematically exploiting me. Their best had included treating me as less important than my brother. Their best had included stealing $230,000 without a second thought, confident that I would simply accept it because I always had before. Their consequences were not my fault. They were the natural result of choices they had made freely, repeatedly, over decades. I had simply stopped absorbing the damage they caused. That realization was more valuable than any settlement money. I got a letter from Tyler about 2 months after the settlement was finalized. It was handwritten, which surprised me. Tyler had always complained about having to write anything longer than a text message. The envelope was addressed sloppily, the stamp crooked, but inside was 3 pages of cramped, uneven handwriting. The paper was lined notebook paper, the kind you'd find in a cheap composition book, and the margins were filled with crossed-out words and restarts. The letter started with anger. I was selfish, vindictive, jealous, and cruel. I had destroyed the family over money. I had humiliated our parents in the newspaper. I had cost him his house, his job, his reputation. He hoped I was happy. He hoped I choked on my precious savings. The first page was pure rage, barely coherent in places, the handwriting growing larger and more aggressive as it went. But the second page shifted. The anger gave way to something rawer. Something that looked almost like confusion. He wrote about how things had always been easy for me. How I'd never struggled the way he had. How I'd gotten good grades without trying, saved money without effort, built a life that seemed to come naturally. How he'd always felt like he was running to catch up, and no matter how hard he tried, I was always ahead. How our parents had noticed his struggles and tried to help, and how he'd come to rely on that help, expect it, need it. You made everything look so simple, he wrote. School, work, money, all of it. You never seemed to need anyone. You just existed, this perfect machine that ran on its own. Meanwhile I was drowning, and Mom and Dad were the only ones throwing me a rope. How was I supposed to compete with someone who didn't even need saving? He wrote that he'd never thought about where the help was coming from. He'd never thought about me at all, really. I was just there. Like furniture. Like a resource that existed for his benefit. I didn't think taking your money would matter to you, he wrote. I didn't think anything mattered to you. You never seemed to care about anything. You just worked and saved and kept to yourself. I figured you'd be fine. You were always fine. The third page was shorter. Less coherent. The handwriting deteriorated, like he was running out of energy or conviction. He didn't apologize, not exactly. But he asked a question that surprised me. When did you decide to stop being part of the family? He wrote. When did you give up on us? Because I'm trying to figure out when things went wrong, and I keep coming back to the same conclusion. You'd already left before we ever took anything. You'd been gone for years, and we just didn't notice. I read that letter 3 times, sitting at my kitchen table with the March sun warming my face. Tyler was wrong about a lot of things. He was wrong about me having it easy. He was wrong about things coming naturally. He was wrong about me not caring. But he was right about one thing. I had left the family long before they'd taken my money. I'd left emotionally, spiritually, in every way that mattered, when I was 23 and I first understood what that savings account really represented. I'd spent 8 years building a separate life they knew nothing about, preparing for the day when they would finally go too far. They'd seen it as abandonment. As giving up on them. I saw it as self-preservation. and I wasn't sure either of us was entirely wrong. The final piece of this story happened last week. I was at my duplex, checking on a minor plumbing issue with one of my tenants, when my phone buzzed with a text from Aunt Carol. "Tyler and Diana are getting divorced," it read. "She's taking the kids to her parents' house in Oregon. He's moving back in with your parents. The house is being sold. I thought you should know." I stood in the parking lot of my property, reading those words over and over. Tyler's family was falling apart. His marriage, his home, his children's daily presence in his life, all of it crumbling. The foundation he'd been so proud of, the legacy my money was supposed to build, had lasted less than 6 months after the settlement. I thought about calling him. About reaching out to offer something, though I wasn't sure what. Condolences? Advice? The hollow satisfaction of being proven right? In the end, I didn't call. I didn't text. I didn't reach out at all. Because there was nothing I could say that would help. Nothing I could offer that wouldn't be tainted by everything that had come before. Tyler and I had never been close, not really. We'd been two strangers who happened to share parents, orbiting each other without ever truly connecting. His life falling apart didn't fill me with joy. But it didn't fill me with grief, either. It just felt sad. Sad and distant and inevitable, like watching a car crash in slow motion when you're standing too far away to intervene. I went home that night to my apartment, to my carefully constructed life, to the peace and security I'd built for myself over years of quiet, determined effort. I made dinner. I read a book. I watched the city lights from my window and thought about what comes next. I'm 32 now. I have resources and options and a future that belongs entirely to me. I could buy a house if I wanted, start a family if I met the right person, travel to places I've always wanted to see. The constraints that shaped my younger years, the financial precariousness, the family obligations, the constant readiness to sacrifice my needs for others, all of it is behind me. My parents call sometimes. I don't answer. They leave voicemails that swing between guilt and resentment, between pleading and blaming. I delete them without listening to the end. Maybe someday I'll be ready to engage with them again, on my own terms, with clear boundaries. Or maybe I won't. The choice is mine now, and that's what matters. Tyler hasn't tried to contact me since his letter. I don't know if he's angry, ashamed, or simply lost in his own chaos. I don't think about him often, and when I do, it's with a detachment that surprises me. He was never really my brother, not in any meaningful sense. He was a stranger who shared my childhood, and now he's a stranger whose adult life has intersected with mine in painful, expensive ways. That's all. The lawsuit is over. The settlement is paying out, sporadically and incompletely, but it's paying. The family that once took me for granted now understands that I was never the pushover they assumed. Whether they've learned anything from that understanding is their business, not mine. I'm free, and sitting here, looking out at the lights of a city that feels like home in a way my family never did, I realize that freedom was always the point. Not revenge. Not justice. Not even the money. Just the freedom to live a life where I'm valued. Where I matter. Where no one can take from me without consequence. It took 31 years to get here. It took planning and patience and the painful decision to stop hoping my family would change. It cost me relationships I once thought I wanted, connections I once believed were real. But it was worth it. Every difficult choice, every lonely night, every moment of doubt and grief and anger, all of it led to this. A life that belongs to me. And no one else. A closing thought for anyone who recognized themselves in this story. The hardest lesson I learned was that love and family are not the same thing. Being related to someone doesn't guarantee they will treat you with kindness. Growing up in a house doesn't make it a home. Sometimes the people who should protect you are the ones you need protection from. If you're in a situation where family takes more than they give, where your needs always come last, where your sacrifices are expected but never reciprocated, know this: you are allowed to choose yourself. You are allowed to build boundaries. You are allowed to stop setting yourself on fire to